Sponsored by New Orleans Distillers, creators of fine spirits and liqueurs. Through dedication to science, art, and passion, blends of tradition and flavor emerge. For you, always locally crafted. New Orleans Distillers, classically Southern.
Tonight, singer Neil Young told Spotify, you can have Neil Young or podcaster Joe Rogan, but you can't have both. So what did Spotify do? And another record quarter for Apple, beating expectations for the last 3 months in earnings. And investors, they're happy. We'll have that and more tonight on Wall Street Wrap-Up. Hi, welcome to Wall Street Wrap-Up. I'm Andre Laborde. For today, for Friday, January the 28th, 2022. I hope your week went well. Well, TGIF stocks surged after a very volatile week, with stock market swings not for the faint of heart. We'll have the markets and just how they closed in just a moment. But in the news this week, on Thursday, the Commerce Department stated that the gross domestic product, the GDP, grew in the United States last year, expanding 5.7% for all of 2021. Now, that was the strongest calendar year growth since 1984. And singer Neil Young gave Spotify a demand. He said, you can have Neil Young or you can have podcaster Joe Rogan, but you can't have both. Well, Spotify, without hesitation, made their decision, and it was bye-bye Neil Young. Joe Rogan is Spotify's money-making cash machine. Spotify is paying Joe Rogan to do his podcast over $100 million, and they're not about to do anything to hurt their investment. Neil Young, by making this demand of an either-or, will be losing approximately 60% of his worldwide streaming income. You know, there's an old saying, be careful for what you wish or ask for. You might just get it. And singer Neil Young, I think he's learned that lesson the hard way. Well, coming up tonight, are you thinking about maybe buying or leasing an automobile, a car? What type of car is best? Is it a sedan or maybe an SUV? And most important, how can I get the best deal? Now, tonight, we'll be talking with automotive specialist for Consumer Reports, writer Mike Quincy. Mike has personally bought for Consumer Reports over 150 automobiles and writes extensively on the latest in America's love affair with the automobile. And Mike will be with us in just a moment. But how did the markets do this week? Well, it was a wild ride. All three indexes were down throughout the day and then surged in the last hour of trading. This week, the Dow Jones ended at 34,726. That was up 1.3% for the week. And the S&P 500, they ended at 4432. That was up 0.8 of a point for the week. And the NASDAQ, they ended the week at 13,770, basically flat for the week. It wasn't up, but it certainly wasn't down. And dividend stocks, well, they're hot right now because, as we all know, inflation is eating at everyone's wallet. But companies know that they can raise dividends, which is a sign of confidence in their company. Plus, dividends are a hedge against inflation. Comcast stated this week that they will hike their annual dividend by 8%. And if you're in the market for a new or used car, one of the places to go to find the best of breed is Consumer Reports. Mike Quincy is in charge of the automobile sector at Consumer Reports, and he's here with us tonight to tell us what you need to do to best prepare against that car salesman. So let's get right to it. Hi, Mike. Welcome to Wall Street Wrap-Up.
So great to be here.
I introduced earlier is that America, about for the last 70 years or so, has had a love affair with the automobile. Do you see America continuing with that love as compared to now with people now with Uber or Lyft?
You know, a few years ago, I saw a statistic that suggests younger people were getting their driver's licenses later and later in life. And I thought, well, that doesn't bode well for, the automotive enthusiast community. I mean, we need to get the younger folks in on this. And as it turns out, there still is a groundswell of automotive enthusiasm, even from the younger people. They just have different tastes than, say, you and I do. They're not going to look at old American muscle cars. They want to go to car shows that have, a lot of Japanese cars and European cars, and they're all modified. It's just another version of hot rods.
You brought up about the Japanese cars, and I had just read where Toyota has surpassed GM, General Motors, which is the first time that GM is not their number one since 1931. And I was kind of taken aback by that. I'm surprised GM has held, first off, I'm surprised that GM has held that position since 1931. And second, that Toyota has now surpassed them. Did that surprise you?
I don't think it really surprised me just because of how serious Toyota takes their business. I mean, they don't do anything in a kind of a rash way. In 1999 or 2000, Toyota came out with their first hybrids, the Prius, but they stuck with it. So that's one of the things I admire about Toyota. They come up with a good idea, a good design, and they just keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. Whereas a lot of designs and new vehicles in Detroit, they start with a big burst, and then they kind of lose interest and they fizzle out. It makes it good for consumers that there are so many companies out there vying for the dollar.
Back about maybe 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, U.S. Detroit automakers had kind of lost their way. And that was when the Japanese automobile manufacturers were making headway. And I remember that was when the days of Lee Iacocca, if you can find a better car, buy it, when he was with Chrysler and such. Do you think that the quality has been consistent with U.S. automakers throughout the last 10, 20 years?
Well, consistent is an interesting choice of words because you might say they've kind of been consistently mediocre instead of consistently good. They're definitely Detroit is definitely making strides. They've got, like you mentioned, there's 40 years of history here. There's 40 years where Detroit can reverse engineer all the cars from Japan or from Korea or from Germany or from England and figure out what makes them tick. Nobody does trucks like Toyota, and as you probably know, that's where the profit is. That's where the money is. So they're definitely focusing on that. But I mean, one of the vehicles that Detroit put out last year, the Chevrolet Corvette, is a world-class sports car. I mean, for a lot less money than they're charging for a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, a Porsche, a Chevrolet Corvette will run with the best of them. So it just gives me the feeling that when they really want to put their mind to it and sweat the details, Detroit can build world beaters.
Today, you've got automobiles being made in other parts of the United States as well, too. So does this create a better type of automobile depending on the region of where these cars are being made?
Well, it can. Just about every manufacturer in the world has some manufacturing plants in the United States, because there's plenty of Fords that are built in Mexico. There are plenty of Chryslers that are built in Canada.
Is that because of labor cost? Labor is so much cheaper?
I think that's a lot of it. It also depends on where they're getting the rest of their supplies. I mean, listen, that's the downside of capitalism. I mean, if you're a Fortune 500 company and you can get your widgets built for less money overseas, and that's going to make your company more profitable, well, then by golly, you're allowed to do that.
Chip shortages today are huge. In fact, you can't always say you can't make a cup of coffee with a Mr. Coffee Pot without having a microchip in there. So, and chips today in automobiles are necessities. So this is causing a problem. How long do you see this lasting?
Well, I'm not an automotive analyst, but I will say the research that I've found suggests that we're going to have a chip shortage into 2023. Now,
Wow.
I don't.
Okay.
Again, I'm not a person that is always studying these kinds of markets. So I can only get the kind of research that everyone else can. But it's definitely causing a problem for new car buyers, and it's also caused the price of used cars have gone up as a result as well, because they can't find a new car. So then they go to the used car market. Demand is high, supply is low, so the price is going up and up and up.
When you go buy a car, normally at one time maybe the buyer was in a better position because of the fact that the seller had a lot of inventory. So that meant the buyer had a good bargaining chip. Well, now, is it just the opposite? Who's in a better position, the buyer or the seller?
Well, it is actually a terrible time to buy a car. And people talk about, well, is it a good time to buy a car? Is it in the winter? I mean, the old expression used to be like, after the Final Four, or after the Super Bowl and before the Final Four is the best time to buy a car because the weather's cold and dark. Listen, right now it's a terrible time to buy a car, any car, because the price is so high. You're not going to be able to negotiate as much. There are popular models out there that are going above sticker price. Consumer Reports buys its own test cars. I was on the hook for about 2.5 years buying our Ford Bronco, and it kept getting delayed because of production snafus. But the coup that I did for our testing program was I negotiated just $5,000 above sticker price, and it pains us like I can't even explain to you. We hate paying above sticker price for a test car, but this was a hot car. We had to get it, and the test coordinator said, "That's as good as we're going to get. Buy it."
When you're negotiating for an automobile with the dealerships, you have to negotiate like everyone else and seeing of what above or below sticker price of what you can get and start negotiating. You're the same.
Yeah, I mean, in a normal market, the advice that I give to anyone is, you go to the dealer and you say, what is your best price on this car? In other words, there's your cost and then there's a sticker. So there's a
Right.
number in the middle. Can we get right to that and save all this time and aggravation? And that's, again, under a normal circumstances, that's exactly how I buy cars. And the negotiations can take 5 minutes. I mean, it's great. But now it's, how much are you going to pay over sticker? And we're Consumer Reports is a publisher, and so we want to get information as quickly as possible out to our subscribers and the general public. So we're always on the hook to try to get cars as fast as possible. And so we can't always negotiate a great price when the car is really hot. Dealers can get top dollar for them. In a year or two, when demand cools down, that's probably a better time to buy a model like the Bronco.
Is there more demand for certain vehicles right now than other vehicles, other types of vehicles?
I think any family-friendly SUV
Hmm.
is demanding a really high price. One of the SUVs that did really well in Consumer Reports test is the Kia Telluride. This is a three-row SUV that just does just about everything right. We've been heaping praise on it. Well, good luck trying to find a new Telluride in the dealership right now. Either they don't have them, or again, they're charging above sticker for them. So because SUVs have really supplanted minivans as the family vehicle of choice, even though there are some minivans out there that are really good. They're more fuel efficient. For example, the Toyota Sienna is all hybrid now. But people want SUVs, and so that is the vehicle that's probably most in demand. And it always seems like pickup trucks are always in demand.
If SUVs are more in demand, let's say if you're not set too much that you wanted an SUV, would you have a better chance of maybe getting a sedan and having more of a pricing negotiation with the dealer than by wanting an SUV?
Absolutely. That
Uh huh.
that is great advice. In other words, when you have a buyer might have a vehicle in mind, and they have their mind, their heart set on it. But the better way to approach it is to be flexible. In other words, do you need an SUV or do you want an SUV? That's the difference between need and want. I've got boys at home. We have this discussion all the time. Do you need it or do you want it? Personally, I actually really like the way sedans drive better than SUVs. The handling is better. They're usually quieter. They have better fuel economy.
So when walking into a dealership, you should come with homework. I mean, basically, be flexible. Also, know that you're not going to have um, the ability as you were maybe a year ago or 2 years ago prior to the chip shortage for doing that. How can a person find out what a car would cost the dealer?
There are a lot of pricing websites out there. I mean, Edmunds has good pricing information. KBB has good pricing information. Consumer Reports has pricing information. So that's really one of the best ways to start out the negotiation is you find out the true dealer cost. And it's not just what you might see in an advertisement. When they say we're going to sell you at cost or below cost or something like that. There's a lot of secret incentives that the factory sends to the dealer. The factory basically says if you sell X number of these cars, we're gonna throw $500 at you or something like that. So there's a lot of times there is more negotiating room than you think on vehicles that aren't quite as popular. But the best advice when it comes to walking into a dealership, and I tell everybody this, and I swear it's true: don't fall in love. And what that means is you walk into the showroom, you see this bright red Ford Mustang GT convertible on the floor. You go, oh my God, I have to have that car. And then the salesperson has got you. You're done. You're finished. So never, ever, ever fall in love. And this is coming from a car enthusiast that loves cars. But you have to stay cold and detached and say, well, I guess it's okay.
Mike, there's an old saying in real estate: never love anything that doesn't love you back. And
Yeah,
I guess
that's right.
you can easily put that right along with automobiles as well too. Hey,
It sounds like my dating life in college.
yeah, exactly. Welcome to the club. I know what you mean. We'll take a break. We're talking with Mike Quincy, and he automotive specialist writer with Consumer Reports. We're talking about automobile buying, and we'll be right back after this. We're talking with Mike Quincy, with automobile writer with Consumer Reports. We're talking about America's love of automobiles, about buying a car and such. Do you find that most buyers look at the aesthetics value? And by that, I mean, right before the break, you were talking about falling in love with a car. Oh my God, that's the red that I was looking for. Or look at the design look of this car. And not really what's so-called under the hood, but the workings of it, but it just looks great. Do most people still you think, buy cars by aesthetics?
I think that's definitely part of it. I mean, when you
Hmm.
look at new designs, and whether it's just slick sports car or a really burly SUV, there's definitely eye appeal there. But according to various surveys that Consumer Reports has done, and other survey organizations, the buyer's wants and needs vary, maybe even from age bracket to age bracket or from region to region. Some people say the number one priority is safety. Other people say it's reliability. Other people say it's fuel economy.
What about EVs, electric vehicles? I think Chrysler just recently came out and said that they're going to be going all electric by 2028. Well, that's only 6 years from now. And I think General Motors said that they want to be all electric by 2035, which is like 13 years from now. Do you think these numbers are possible, being all electric by those times?
It's really hard to tell, and a lot of manufacturers are saying this too. I mean, Volvo made a big splash a couple of years ago, saying they're going to be electrified, which doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be all electric. It might mean that they're going to be hybrid, plug-in electric hybrids that also have an internal combustion engine. But listen, there's a lot of countries around the world that the major cities are saying we are going to be banning internal combustion engines in our cities by this date. And so, the manufacturers have to gear up and be ready for this. Now, in terms of the United States, certainly in the Midwest and farther west in this country, the cities and towns are much farther apart. So electric vehicles are a tougher sell. Now, listen, if you're in the car business and you're not thinking about electric vehicles, you're way behind the curve. But they're all looking at the success that Tesla has had. Tesla's sales have been phenomenal.
When it comes to battery power, though, Mike, and I don't know if you were involved with being in the northeast section of the United States, but there was a huge snowstorm in the Virginia area, I-95. I mean, cars were backed up for literally 20 hours on the highway. Well, my first thought was, when it comes to battery powered, I mean, batteries do not usually work as well in cold weather. And I'm thinking, if you're comparing a combustible engine as compared to battery operated, there'd be a lot more stranded automobiles with EVs if they were bumper to bumper on the I-95. What type of a problem that all EVs may create for just with weather.
Well, it's definitely true. In Consumer Reports' own testing of electric vehicles, we found that driving range definitely decreases in the cold weather. When you're in your car and it's 10 degrees out, and I live in Connecticut, so I know what those cold mornings feel like. You want to run your heater, you want to run the seat heaters. Maybe the steering wheel has a heater on it. All of that takes up your battery juice. And I did study the horrible traffic jam that happened in Virginia. I've driven that road half a dozen times probably in my life, and I can't imagine what that would be like. Some people were just going out for a quick drive or a 15-20 minute commute to work, and then they're sitting in their cars for like over 25 hours or something like that.
Mhm.
It's really a nightmare. And I think so, some of the reports that I read suggested that if you were in an EV and you had a decent charge, you're not really moving. If you're in an electric vehicle and it's cold, you're probably just kind of running the heater and you're going to be able to last for a while.
Sure.
It's when you're rolling and you're using the heat where the EVs are having a bit more challenges in the cold weather.
There've been times I've gone to bed and I forgot to plug in my phone, my iPhone, and I woke up in the morning with a dead battery. Well, it's one thing I got to get to work and my phone doesn't really work yet. But if I forget to charge my car in before I go to bed, I fall asleep in front of TV and I woke up and I just went right to bed and I go, oh, I forgot to charge my car. How do you think that's going to have a problem with American productivity?
Listen, it's a legitimate concern. I think if you switch over to being an EV buyer, an EV driver, an EV owner, you're going to get a new routine down. And Consumer Reports has been so committed to being on top of electric vehicles that they've actually paid to have a level 2 chargers installed in our house. I mean, behind my shoulder is my garage, and I've got a level 2 charger in there. So we're going to be, driving these cars and charging them up and kind of getting used to the new normal. But it can be a challenge. Certainly, if you're a family with young children, you're probably going to need two vehicles at least in your household. One, a regular gas engine vehicle, if you're going the EV route, because you always need to have a vehicle on hand in case of emergencies with young children.
What about extended warranties? I don't know if you're like me, Mike, but probably a week does not go by that I don't get a robocall going, would you like to extend your warranty? Now, when a person goes to the dealer and is about to buy the car and the salesman says, would you like to get that extended warranty? What should a person do?
In a fairly recent Consumer Reports survey, we asked our subscribers if they had an extended, where they paid for an extended warranty, and did they ever use it? And I'm don't quote me on these. I think around like 60-70% said they never saw that money again. In other words, it was not necessarily a good use of money. I think extended warranties can be beneficial if you're buying a vehicle that has traditionally poor reliability. If you've got your heart set on that Alfa Romeo Giulia, then yeah, maybe I might go for the extended warranty. But you really need to look at the fine print. In other words, the companies that are putting out these warranties have all of the odds stacked in their favor. They have a generally good idea of the components that they think could fail and could be really expensive. And you might find that those particularly vulnerable components might not be covered. So, be a good consumer, read the fine print. But the better advice, perhaps, is to buy a vehicle that has a good reliability history so you won't need it.
Okay, you are the car guy, okay? You are Consumer Reports automobile specialist for knowledgeable. What kind of car does Mike Quincy drive?
That's a great question, and it's going to surprise you and your listeners. I actually don't own a car. I'm always I know it's crazy. I'm always driving the Consumer Reports test cars. So every day or every couple days, I swap out into a new car or one that we've previously tested. I will say that my wife owns a very fuel efficient and reliable Toyota. And it's actually an old test car. It's a 2002. But her driving is usually just kind of local. And if we're driving anywhere that requires any kind of miles, we're always in a test car. So I actually don't own a car, but I did used to own a 1965 Ford Mustang GT, which was gorgeous.
A 65 Mustang? Oh my goodness, that was one of the, I think 64 or 65, 64 was the first Mustang, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, 64 and a half, they say.
And a half.
So,
thank you.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
so I had this Mustang, and it sat in the garage, and the boys were young then. It just wasn't getting the love that it needed, the time and attention. And I actually wound up selling it to a very good friend of mine who lives out in Texas, and he's given me first rights of refusal.
Mike, I'll end it with this. A very wise man told me, never fall in love with a car. Okay?
I wonder who said that.
And he's a very wise man who told me that. And it wasn't that long ago. That's it.
Very smart.
I'm out of time, unfortunately, this time, but I hope you come back because there's a lot more things I want to talk to you about automobiles.
Anytime. Love it. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. That's Mike Quincy from Consumer Reports. Well, if you've got a question about finance or a comment about the show, we'd love to hear from you. Make it pithy, make it concise, and write us at Andre@WallStreetWrapUp.info. And now for a look ahead for next week. But first, what branch of service was created by an act of Congress on this day, January 28th, in 1915? We'll have the answer in just a moment. Well, what branch of service was created on this day by an act of Congress in 1915? The U.S. Coast Guard. It combined the life-saving service and the revenue cutter service. And, well, in 2 weeks, we've got a guest that you won't want to miss. By now, all of you have been hearing about the tensions around the world. Vladimir Putin has over 100,000 troops outside of Ukraine. And will Xi Jinping, the head of China, take over Taiwan? Well, Major General James Livingston has been a member of exclusive organizations throughout his adult life. As a young man, he joined the Marine Corps. And the Marines, which is the smallest military service of branches, and that's by design. He rose from second lieutenant to major general. Now, for our non-military viewers, major general is a two-star general. And he joined another exclusive group because during the Vietnam War, he was awarded the nation's highest award for valor, the Medal of Honor. Now, that is an exclusive group that many who do join do so, unfortunately, posthumously. Now, fortunately, he not only lived, but he'll be here with us to give us his thoughts on the events of Ukraine, China, North Korea, and so much more. That's Major General James Livingston in 2 weeks. And next week on Wall Street Wrap-Up, our guest will be the Chief Investment Officer of T. Rowe Price, David Giroux. At T. Rowe Price, David oversees over $1.6 trillion in assets under management. And in addition, he manages T. Rowe Price's U.S. equity division. Next week, the Chief Investment Officer and the head of the U.S. Equity Division for T. Rowe Price, David Giroux. And as a reminder, we repeat the show on Sunday mornings, but always the best way is to set your DVR so you'll never miss an episode. And that's our show for Friday, January 28th, 2022. Hope you've enjoyed it. My thanks to Mike Quincy from Consumer Reports for joining us this evening. But as always, we appreciate you for allowing us into your homes tonight. Remember, you can always follow us on all the social media, on Facebook, on YouTube, Twitter, and WYES.org. So enjoy the weekend ahead and have a productive week as well. I'll see you next week. For Wall Street Wrap-Up, I'm Andre Laborde. Remember, money never sleeps. Good night.
Sponsored by New Orleans Distillers, creators of fine spirits and liqueurs. Through dedication to science, art, and passion, blends of tradition and flavor emerge. For you, always locally crafted. New Orleans Distillers, classically Southern.